Grab your favorite beverage. It's time for the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, Fantasy Freaks and Geeks? Welcome to the part one of our Week 5 Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm going to start this episode off with giving myself a little bit of credit. Anybody who paid attention last week to some of my calls, you might be thinking I'm a genius here, and you're probably not too far off there. I said last week that the Titans would focus on the run game versus the Falcons after allowing 9 sacks to Jacksonville, and what do you know, Derrick Henry had a season-high 27 attempts. I said that James White, Zeke Elliott, and David Johnson would be very much used in the pass game, and James White led his team in targets, catches, and receiving yards. Zeke and Johnson both had season-high in targets, Zeke with 7, David Johnson with 11. I said Kerryon Johnson would be heavily used, and he had a season-high career-high 29 touches. I said with no T.Y. Hilton that the Colts tight ends would be involved a lot more, 13 targets and a touchdown for each of Ebron and Doyle. And also I said that Austin Hooper would have another great game versus the Titans, and he went out and caught 9 of his 11 targets for 130 yards. So, not trying to brag or anything, but Week 4 I did pretty well, I gotta say. So this week, going into Week 5, we got some injuries to keep an eye on. It's actually a lot of them. And on this Part 1 episode, we will look at the Thursday night preview, Rams at Seahawks. And then tomorrow night, I'm going to record the rest of this week's episode and do all the NFC home games, then all the AFC home games. So let's get right into these injuries to keep an eye on for Week 5. We got Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner, two of the Steelers' best players. Juju's got a toe injury. He didn't practice on Wednesday, and neither did James Conner, who's dealing with an ankle injury. We saw Jalen Samuels used in almost every way he could be last week, running the ball, throwing the ball, catching the ball. And if Conner were to miss again, I would assume Jalen Samuels would see a lot of the same type of work. So I added Samuels in one of my leagues that I'm kind of hurting at running back, and sorry to all you James Conner owners, but I'm kind of hoping that Conner sits out this week. Looking at Tyrell Williams, he now has a foot injury to go along with the hip pointer that had him questionable for the past 2 weeks. Christian Kirk has an ankle injury and most likely will miss this week. Wayne Gallman and a neck injury. We saw him step in for Saquon Barkley, have a really good game last week, but he could be limited in Week 5. The Patriots need a new kicker, and so do you if you had him in your fantasy lineup. Steven Gostkowski is now on injured reserve. Sam Darnold, my quarterback with the Jets, he's still questionable with the mono. I would be surprised if he plays. I'm going to expect he's going to miss at least another week. Deshaun Jackson could miss another game in that Eagles-Jets game there. Kenny Stills has a hamstring injury and an ankle injury, so go get Kiki QT or Will Fuller if he was dropped, because if Stills doesn't play, one of those two guys is going to be involved. Josh Allen had a concussion left in the middle of the second half against the Patriots. It's a shame because they were on their way to beating the Patriots in that game, but he's going to have to pass the concussion protocol to play. Dontre Ullman now is on injured reserve with, I think, a quadricep injury, so the injuries just keep racking up for the Chargers, but they're still alive. They're still in it, 2-2. Devontae Adams has a toe injury. He could miss. He left the game on Thursday night, was it? He left the game, and we saw Jimmy Graham step in, and he caught a touchdown in his absence, so I expect Jimmy Graham, MVS, Geronimo Allison to all see an uptick in value, obviously, if Devontae Adams doesn't play. And the last one to keep in mind here is Marlon Mack. He's got a calf and an ankle, I think. He's been questionable the past couple weeks now, so we'll see if he suits up this week against the Raiders. So I think we are in line here. We're going to drop in Adam's. Actually, this week, me and Adam changed some stuff up for our FanDuel lineup of the week. And we're actually going with the Thursday through the Sunday slate so we can get the extra 3 games, more players to pick from. We entered into a smaller game, only 3 to 100 players, just $1 to get in. We're just trying to get on the winning side here. And we actually built this roster together before our call, which has, the past couple weeks just let Adam kind of do his thing, but maybe 2 heads are better than 1. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in, and then we will hit up the Thursday night preview. We are here with Adam Mattress and the Week 5 FanDuel lineup of the week. Adam, it has been a rough season for us so far. We have to... We got to figure out something here. We're changing up our strategy here. We just sat down for the past 20 minutes and came up with this lineup together. So hopefully 2 minds are better than 1. So why don't you get us started here with what we're doing at QB this week?
All right, this week's quarterback, we're going with Jameis Winston against the New Orleans Saints for $7,600. He's been hot. I'm hoping that we can catch a 3rd game in a row like the past 2 we've seen. And the price is there. He doesn't have to do a lot to get you the value you need.
Yeah, 7 touchdowns in the last 2 games. He's playing the Saints this week. Or not the Saints, I'm sorry.
No, you got it, the Saints.
They are playing the Saints. Okay, cool. So, yeah, I like this one too. What are we doing with our running backs?
All right, so our running backs, we're going to go first with David Johnson. I love his price at $6,800, playing a Cincinnati defense that's just primed to be run on. I think, he's been pretty consistent, and for that price, that's perfect.
Okay, cool.
I'm really liking that pick. And then, because he's so cheap, we were able to go up with the big dog, Mr. Holdout himself, Ezekiel Elliott, playing a Packers defense that running the ball is the only thing you can do on them. And for $8,800, I think that's a great matchup. He really does seem like he's ready to have that big game. Hopefully it comes this week for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, last week he had a dud, and this week he's got no Tyron Smith at the left tackle position, so I would figure that the Cowboys would try and run the ball more, keep their quarterback safe. And he's got a good matchup, so nice. I like these 2 running backs for sure. We're off to a good start here. What are we doing with our 3 wide receiver spots? Go ahead and give all 3 of them to me.
All right, so we're going to be going with Cooper Kupp for $6,800. I'm amazed his price has not gone up yet, but we're going to take that.
He's a target monster so far this year. It's crazy.
We're going to go with the Tampa Bay stack, as I said to you previously. I think maybe that's what we missed out on the past 2 weeks. I don't know. But Mike Evans for $7,700. Playing with Jameis against a New Orleans team. They're in the Dome. I know Godwin had a monster game last time. I think Evans comes out and just is a beast.
And you said he's $100 cheaper than Chris Godwin is?
Yeah.
That's wild to me.
That's the modern day NFL we live in.
It makes sense because Godwin's been playing really well, but to be, for Evans to be cheaper than him, that's wild. But hey, we'll take it, right?
Right. And then, speaking of that other wide receiver, we're going to go with the other wide receiver in Green Bay this week, MVS Valdez Scantling for $6,300. Devontae, he got turf toe, looks banged up. Even if he plays, he could just be a decoy. And they're playing Dallas, so I think MVS is due for a big game again. And I like his price at $6,300. But there is a caveat.
If Devontae Adams is to play, then what's the plan here?
So if Devontae Adams is to play and seems healthy, we're going to go up with Julian Edelman at $6,500 because with our lineup, we saved $200 just for this scenario right here. So as the week progresses, it's a situation we're going to monitor. And as we come into Sunday, that is 100% a move we will be considering. Julian Edelman for 6,500 or MVS for 6,300. It's all going to come down to Devontae Adams.
Okay.
So then coming in hot at tight end. Matt, I'm going to let you read this one. This was your pick. I think it's a fantastic pick.
So I was just sitting down before we did this recording, and I was previewing the Cardinals-Bengals game, and the Cardinals' defense is historically atrocious to tight end so far this season. Make sure you tune into the rest of the episode, and you'll hear it when I get through the AFC home games. But it's the best tight end matchup of the week. Tyler Eifert's in a great situation right now with the Bengals being down John Ross for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Still no AJ Green there. Their defense is not all that great, so it's kind of a whole storm of good opportunity for Tyler Eifert, and for $4,600 to get the best tight end matchup of the week. To me, it seems like a steal when it comes to this whole daily fantasy thing here. And then
I couldn't agree more on that.
And then we're going with probably the best matchup as far as the DST goes with the Patriots, right? I can't imagine anybody's more expensive than the Patriots this week.
Well, we'll hit that one at the very end. Let's.
I'm sorry, I forgot about our flex spot.
Let's hope that he's not let's hope that he doesn't have a forgettable outing with David Montgomery at 5,700, playing Oakland. Again, that was a value play on our part. He doesn't need to do much to get us that value, and to the credit of playing Oakland, I think he has a good chance. Maybe he comes out, rushed for 21 times against a good Vikings defense.
Yeah, he had 24 touches altogether, if I'm remembering correctly. And he's actually, it seems like he is on the upward trend, whereas Tariq Cohen is on the downward trend. Montgomery's been getting more and more targets each week. There's going to be no Mitchell Trubisky there, so they're going to have to rely on this defense and this running game in order to get a win out there in London. $5,700 for a starting running back that has a good matchup and is in a good spot to get over 20 touches again. So, yeah, I think it's another good play for us here in our flex. And then
bring us home.
And then, like I said, the Patriots D playing against the Washington Redskins for $5,500. The Patriots defense has been ridiculous this year as far as turnovers go, as far as points allowed. To me, it makes sense to pay up a little extra and get that DST that gives you a really good chance of getting a couple turnovers and some sacks and whatnot. No matter what quarterback plays there in Washington, this Pats DST should beat the hell out of them. So I think
it's really one of those you can't try to outsmart the room situation at this point.
Yeah,
right?
like is it worth saving the $500 to go with the next best DST? We were talking about maybe going with the Titans against the Bills if Josh Allen doesn't play, but I don't know, man. It just seems like an easy pick here with the Patriots DST at $5,500. So, all right, man. Well, I think this is a good lineup here, and one thing that we didn't mention actually, another thing that we're doing differently this week, we're opening it up to the full Thursday through Monday slate, so we get the Thursday night game, the Sunday night game, and the Monday night game. So, now that we have an extra 6 teams worth of players in the pool here, I think it could open us up to more possibilities to win some money with this lineup here. So we're going to be, me and Adam will both be entering this in probably to one of the Thursday through Sunday, $1 or $2 games, and just to see if we can get in the winning side here and then maybe start stacking up some wins. So, cool, man.
Let's do it this week.
Let's do it. Yeah, and good luck with your WNBA daily fantasy lineups tonight. I hope it goes well for you.
You got to keep the fundamentals.
All right, man. We'll talk to you next week. Good luck this weekend.
You guys do the same.
Thursday night football here in Week 5 brings us the Los Angeles Rams going to Seattle to play the Seahawks. Rams coming off of that embarrassing loss to the Buccaneers at home, 55-40. And the Seahawks coming off of a pretty dominating win over the Cardinals in an NFC West matchup, 27-10, two straight NFC West, two division games for the Seahawks in a row here. Jared Goff had a 500 pass yard game on 68 attempts, which is crazy. They only ran the ball with the running backs 9 times, but he threw 3 picks and he lost a fumble. So just not a very good game all around for the Rams. It was awesome for the Rams wide receivers, but the defense looked horrible. Jared Goff did not play well, albeit with 500 plus passing yards, but 4 turnovers, you're going to lose. We saw Gurley get 11 targets last week, which is awesome. We saw the Rams tight ends, Higbee and Everett, targeted 15 times between the two of them. Like I said, it was an awesome game for these 3 wide receivers and Gurley to an extent with his involvement in the pass game last week. But I'm willing to bet that we're not going to see too many games like this from the Rams again this season. I really don't think that the Rams coaching staff wants Jared Goff throwing the ball 70 times a game. And this Thursday night game is going to tell us a lot about the Rams and whether they should still be considered a dominant team. They've kind of been up and down so far this year. We see teams generally after Super Bowl, besides the Patriots, of course, after the Super Bowl kind of not necessarily lay eggs, but they're usually not as dominant as they were the year before. So kind of a pivot point for the Rams here in their season. If they can go up to Seattle and in a division game play well. Russell Wilson is still the man. Will Dissly took advantage of the matchup and the opportunity last week. He led the team in targets, catches, yards. He was the only pass catcher to score. Chris Carson with a clean game, no fumbles, almost 150 total yards. Caught all 4 of his targets. He's been playing great with no Rashad Penny, but Rashad Penny was taken off of the injury report today, recording this on Wednesday. So it seems like he's going to be coming back, and they're probably going to be splitting carries. Carson's caught 14 of his 15 targets on the season. He's had 42 touches in the 2 games without Rashad Penny, so I wouldn't be too worried about him losing substantial work to Penny when he returns. I bet he still sees 15 to 18 touches a game. Last year this was a team that just ran the hell out of the ball, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't want to do the same thing this year. The Seahawks were up 20-3 at halftime, so I'm not going to read too much into the wide receiver numbers for the Seahawks last week against the Cardinals. Tyler Lockett caught all 4 of his targets. Metcalf only caught 1 of his 4. He's got to do better than that, but looking today kind of surprised me. DK Metcalf is actually in the top 10, I think, as far as red zone targets go so far in this season. So he hasn't really had any big games yet, but I really think they're on their way eventually. So I would be excited about DK Metcalf, someone that you maybe been stashing or somebody you've been just keeping an eye on, keeping him on your wish list, if you will. But we'll see how it goes here in this game. I like Will Dissly for sure. And Chris Carson, he's got a great matchup here. The Rams are allowing the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. They're also in the top 10 as far as most receptions and receiving yards allowed to running backs as well. So whether or not Penny comes in and gets a full 50-50 split, which I don't think he will, I think both of them are actually in a good position to really play well. And actually, if you look back to last year, the Seahawks running backs really beat up the Rams defense in the run game. That was when they had Carson and Penny and Mike Davis, who's now on the Bears. So could be another big week for these running backs with the Seahawks. So that does it for the Thursday night preview. That does it for the week 5 part 1 episode of the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. Make sure you tune in to part 2 when we run through all the NFC home games, all the AFC home games, and I'm not sure if we're going to do our 3-team parlay at the end of part 2, or if we're going to do it separately on maybe Friday or Saturday and release that, right in the middle of the weekend. Try and give Chris a little more time so he can maybe make some better picks for us. So thanks for tuning in, and like I said, make sure you tune in to part 2. And as always, may the fantasy gods be cruel to your opponents.
You have been listening to the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. For more episodes and information, follow us on social media and tune in every week. Beers and Bruisers is available on Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Alexa, Reach TV, or your favorite podcast service. Beers and Bruisers is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. To find out more about this and other great shows on our network, visit us online at hcuniversalnetwork.com or download the free HC Universal Network app today. Fantasy football is fun, but gambling addiction destroys lives. If you or someone you love suffers from gambling addiction, please do not be afraid to seek help. The National Council on Problem Gaming operates a national problem gambling helpline network. Contact them today at 1-800-522-4700. Thank you for tuning in to the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. Please remember to drink responsibly and always look for your man downfield.